Hello friends! This video documents my attempt to construct a pair of 18th century stays within 1 week or less. I'm using the American Duchess Simplicity pattern number 8162 with some modifications to fit me better. This is the first pair of stays that I have ever made, and I feel that they came out wonderfully for a beginner to historical costuming. With that said, let's get right to it, shall we? Today we are working with the Simplicity 8162, aka this, which is, I believe, the Outlander inspired pattern. As you can see, it comes with a chemise, it comes with a bum pad, and it comes with a stays pattern. We are working on the stays. I used the original pattern pieces and I cut them out. I made a mock-up. The mock-up did not fit. It says in the pattern to beware because it's a little bit short-waisted, and that was exactly the case on me. So you can see here, I marked I used the online guide for how to lengthen or shorten stays, and it was recommended to measure up 1 inch from the tabs. So there's the tab line, and there is 1 inch up, tab line 1 inch up, and then cut on this line and lengthen as needed. I didn't want to cut the actual pattern. What I did instead was, let's see here. I lengthened it by tracing the front of the pattern to this line, added 1 inch on that line, and then went ahead and traced the bottom. And on some I did need to adjust just slightly where everything laid. So you can see I had to chop off a bit there. On the back, ooh, got a little bit dark there. On the back you can see I had to change where the eyelets were laying. But I have gone through, I've made copies of each piece. I've added the markings that tell you how to place the pattern on the fabric. I've added the bone-in channels, and I've added the eyelets. Right now I am just cutting out all of my pieces. It's very interesting. I'm cutting out my pieces after first tracing around the pattern pieces in chalk. I'm doing this on both the outer and the inner layers of fabric. Flatlining the 2 layers together, making sure to match each piece and to mirror them on the other side. I had already cut out all of this black stuff. It is a duck cloth type fabric, so it's going to hold its shape very well and is going to provide quite a bit of structure that the boning will not, whereas this front panel here is an old curtain, specifically a shower curtain, but it is very nice and soft, and I feel it will do very well because the boning will go in between these two layers. So this only needs to be sturdy, and it is. So that is very good. That's very good. I have gone ahead and flatlined all of my pieces together by hand. I'm currently redoing my sewing room, so my sewing machine is in hiding. It's in hibernation. So this shall be all right, and then I'm off to work. This will be a project for when I return. The plan is to have this pair of stays completely boned and bound in a week. Today is July the 8th. I'm starting this technically today because this is when I cut everything out, but we shall see how that goes for us. So, while I was checking to see what direction my fabric was in, I also decided to check the boning I'm going to be using to make sure it would be fitting, and it is a very, very tight fit. These are, I believe, 1/3 of an inch rather than 1/4, maybe. It's very, very tiny. So these channels will have to be sewn down the middle, and 2 bones will have to be put in rather than just 1/2 inch bone. But it'll be alright, and it is just barely long enough. So I believe I'll have to trim just a little here at the top and at the bottom for the binding anyway. So everything should be all fine and dandy. I'm using a fabric marker and clear 18-inch ruler to mark out all of my boning channels before I sew them. I simply extended the channels marked on the original pattern, and I used my machine to sew the channels using the lines as a guide. After a quick trim and a file, the bones are ready to be inserted. Hello, it is about 12:30 a.m. and for the most part, all of my stays pieces are completely sewn and boned, with the exception of these 2 back pieces. I think the channels are a little too narrow, so what I will do tomorrow is, well, later today actually, is I'll go through and I will open those channels just a little bit more and pick this teensy line out, just so we can slide those in there easier. And then this will get trimmed and tucked. Everything will be assembled. it is also a huge mess. My table is an absolute wreck. I've been using this just grit paper to file all the zip ties down so they don't tear through anything. But it is late, I'm tired, more work to come in the morning. I'm going to bed. What happened was these channels were made slightly too small and I didn't catch it when I should have. So I tried to put the boning in and it obviously didn't work very great. So I re-sewed a few of these panels and just took out the original boning channels just so our zip ties would fit a little bit better in there. But they're all boned. My desk is a mess. Water is wet. It's okay. After the bones are in, I went ahead and sewed the pieces together, securing them in place with some quick basting before running it through my machine, careful to avoid hitting the boning. To the binding. I elected to sew the binding by hand as I've heard it was a harder part to sew by machine and I wanted the control of hand sewing. I'm using wide single fold bias tape for this. I'm unfolding it to sew along one crease so the tape will be even when I fold it over. In some corners and curves, I'm clipping the seam allowance of the tape so that it lays smoother. I'm using a whip stitch to bind the edge to the inside fabric. For the eyelets, I followed the eyelet markings on the original pattern, but I added an extra with the length. I'm using an awl to punch holes roughly 1/4 of an inch wide, then whip stitching all around, occasionally using the awl so that the hole keeps its shape. And with that, the stays are done. It took me just a day over a week to complete, so not exactly my goal, and roughly 65 hours of work were put into this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in more of my sewing adventures.